And next we're going to cover audio on the V-160HD. So remember in the first video we talked about the input level. So this is the level and not the preamp or gain for the mic inputs. So generally you're going to keep everything at 0 dB, right? And that's just like a pass-through level for say like a line level source, or you're setting up the mixer before you adjust the level. You're going to set the gain before you do that. So everything you need is in this audio input menu. So audio in 1 and 2, those are the XLR TRS combo inputs. You have pan controls, fan and power if you can use condenser microphone. And analog gain is your preamp, so you can get up to 64 dB of gain here. But if you're going to do line level, you're going to keep it at 0 dB, maybe, and then keep the level at 0. So you could do 0 dB for line level. You may, if it's not entirely on calibration, you might add a couple dB of gain there. Stereo link. So if you bring in an audio console, right, line level, turn on stereo link, and you do all your level control of that line level signal via audio input 1. 2 is disabled in that situation. That's if you're not going to use them as mic preamps. And then if you are going to use them as mic pre's, you have effect presets. You can add delay to any audio input, including embedded audio. You have a reverb send, high pass filter, echo cancellation, anti-feedback, a noise gate, de-esser. There's a de-esser on the switcher, which is great. A compressor and EQ, and a voice changer if you want to have some fun. So you can do a voice changer on those mic pre's. And then audio in 3 and 4, this is the RCA in. Now, with these stereo channels, so the RCA in is one of the stereo channels, and then each embedded audio input is a stereo channel. You have a mono switch, and this can help if you have a camera that has a microphone connected to it, and then on your V160 mix, you hear it on the hard left channel. You can set it to left only for that embedded input, and you would center it mono, or you can sum the left and the right. So a very helpful tool to keep all the dialogue centered in your mix. You have a mute control, so you can, especially helpful for embedded inputs, where if you don't want them to end up in the mix, sometimes cameras can have line noise that even though they don't have a microphone on the camera, it's somehow ending up in the mix. You can just mute that input. And then you can see a similar run of effects for the RCA input, but there's no voice changer or de-esser because it's not a microphone preamp. So you just have a high-pass filter, noise gate, compressor, and EQ. And of course, you still have the delay and reverb send. USB input. So the USB-C can output audio and video for streaming, but it can also, the audio is two-way. You can bring in 2 channels of audio into the switcher and mix it with everything else. So you can see, similar to the RCA input, those functions there. And the Bluetooth input, as I mentioned earlier, if you have like a music player on a phone or tablet, you can bring in 2 channels of audio that way as well, with similar processing options. You go to the second page, you have all your HDMI inputs. So just like RCA, USB, and the Bluetooth in, you have these sort of options. Digital gain 2 is like a trim, which can help for processing. I don't recommend boosting this setting. This is really best used if you want to create a little more headroom when if you're using some of these effects like the compressor or EQ. Bringing this digital gain down a little bit can help get you the headroom that you need for processing. And then the SDI inputs as well, just like the HDMI. On the output, there's the output assignment. You can choose which mix goes to it, so whether the aux mix or the main mix, the master output. You can also monitor the aux mix in the headphones, so you have flexibility with how the audio is routed to the video and analog audio outputs. And for the main out, you can set the level, which is tied to this knob here. You can add delay to the output as well if you need. In addition to those individual inputs, you have a limiter. You have the reverb return, and then a bus EQ and multiband compressor. For the aux out, similar functionalities. Now, talk about aux sends, you can see here that you can create a mix minus by setting up the send levels. For if you do manual here, you can see all the video inputs and the analog inputs. You can set the send level in 1 dB increments to that aux bus. So that's helpful if you want to set up a mix minus. And then you can also choose, and look at the block diagram on the product page. This will help in this situation. You can have the send be pre-fader, post-fader, or you could do dry and bypass all the effects. So if you have more questions about that, just reach out to me and we can work through it. But just know that if you need to create a mix minus, or you want to create an alt mix with that's dry without any effects, you have a ton of flexibility with the sends on the 160. There's also the auto mixing function that you saw up here in the first video. So we'll jump to audio auto mixing next here. So the higher the weight, the more prominence it has in the mix, and you can enable and disable the individual sources, including all the video inputs and the analog inputs and the USB and Bluetooth input. And you can enable or disable it with that button, and it'll follow the rules that you set here. And audio follows video. So with this, you could have it so that, say, HDMI 7 is a media player. I only hear its audio when it's on program or in a picture-in-picture on program. Otherwise, when I cut away from it, it's muted. So audio follows is a great way to automate your mutes. And you can also have an analog source follow a particular cross point. So if you only want the RCA input to be active when input 7 is selected, you can do that, for example. Okay, and that covers audio, and next we'll go on to streaming.